Greetings, my comrades and fellow travelers. A number of years ago, I made a video showing the top 10 Dungeons & Dragons monsters that I think are the most interesting and enjoyable. By now, the game has progressed quite a bit, and I'm back to talk about the creatures of the 5th edition Monster Manual. Let's kick open these dungeon doors and see what's lurking on the other side. Top 10 Dungeons & Dragons monsters! 5th edition. Number 10, Giant Scorpion. Normal scorpions are already badass, but when they're the size of horses, things really get dangerous. Beyond the freakiness factor, scorpions have two great abilities, grabbing and poison. This makes the giant scorpion particularly treacherous. Its twin claws can snatch up prey that might otherwise run away, and its stinger delivers a potent venom of 4d10 poison damage, half on a successful Constitution save. For low-level characters, this is deadly. I do find it odd that the Monster Manual doesn't give the giant scorpion any stealth or climbing abilities. All scorpions are great at hiding, and most of them are good at scaling up walls, rocks, and about any surface that isn't completely smooth. I would personally give the giant scorpion proficiency with stealth and something for climbing, such as a climb speed of 20 feet or advantage on ability checks made to climb. In fact, I recently used the giant scorpion in the crypt encounter for my Isle of the Lost Enchantress adventure. There was a moment when the scorpion needed to climb up in order to quickly get at the characters. Luckily, the scorpion rolled high enough on its athletics check to climb, but as soon as I resolved the check, it felt odd that this arachnid might be struggling to climb up a rough, stony wall. The weak point of the giant scorpion is that it's just a big bug. It has no concept of tactics, planning, or foresight. It is a basic predator animal that just runs on instinct. In my crypt encounter, an enchanted statue was commanding the scorpion and magically protecting it. When one of the characters dispelled the statue, the scorpion suddenly became less of a threat.
Number 9, the Grell.
I have forever loved the Grell. It's just so weird and freaky. It always makes me think that in deep, forlorn places underground, there exists all kinds of bizarre life forms. We can look at images of demons and devils, and oh yeah, they're so evil and scary, blah blah blah, but there are few more nightmarish creatures than the Grell. Imagine you are searching through some ruined subterranean hall. As your torchlight flickers against a nearby corner, this aberrant monstrosity comes screeching from a shadowy nook. A floating, bulbous brain with a beaked mouth, no eyes, and barbed venomous tentacles. Its poison can paralyze you, and the thing will carry you off to some unspeakable fate. They even speak their own language, Grell. What in the nine hells does the Grell language sound like? This horrific aberration has always unnerved me a bit, so it won its place on my list. Number 8, the Etten. What do you get when you take a boring brute like an ogre or hill giant, but you give it 2 heads and a multiple personality complex? Pure fun. And the Etten can hit hard. Really hard. Dealing 2d8 plus 5 damage with both its battle axe and its morning star in one action. By far the best part of the Etten is its 2 heads. Give each one a unique name, voice, and personality, and get ready for some spectacular role-playing. This leads me to ponder all kinds of fantastic questions. What if the heads get into an argument? What if they want to go in 2 different directions? What if the characters bribe or persuade one head, but not the other? What if a mother Etten was breastfeeding her baby Etten, one mouth per nipple, and a group of adventurers came along at that moment? What do conjoined Etten twins look like? Next time you want an interesting combat encounter with a big brutish monster, go for an Etten rather than a vanilla ogre or hill giant. And make sure to play up its twin personality element. Number 7. NPCs.
You mean people can be monsters too?
That's right, little Jimmy. In fact, some of the best role-playing comes not from orcs and demons, but from humans, elves, and other common races. This is where some of the best gaming happens, when the characters get involved in scenes and plots that involve other people. It's because we can relate to them. When you find a group of orcs and you kill them because they're bad, ugly monsters, gotta kill them, you'll probably forget the encounter within a few sessions. When you fight another person, especially when there is story and connections and consequences to your actions, suddenly you find a new layer of depth. The 5th edition Monster Manual has a number of NPC stat blocks, and it could have easily had several more if not for design and printing constraints. But it's relatively easy to use a Dungeon Master's Guide to improve or alter the NPCs, or create new ones altogether. It's also so much fun to pair NPCs with beasts or other types of monsters. You could have a druid with a couple scouts and a brown bear companion, or a cult fanatic with cultist followers and a minor elemental or demon. These types of encounters have many elements going on simultaneously and easily connect with role-playing scenes, so they feel more dynamic and alive. I find this more impactful than killing a goblin who you could just care less about because he's some stupid ugly goblin who you don't even understand and you don't know anything about his way of life or his culture, and there's probably no law or story element to complicate the fact that you just murdered him.
Number 6. The White.
What do you do when you don't want a mindless zombie, nor a wild, flesh-eating ghoul, nor a high-powered vampire or lich? You turn to the White. Whites do have some similarity with vampires. They drain life and energy from the living, but they don't drink blood. They're humanoid undead, but they're pale and ghastly looking instead of the typically alluring vampire. They are powerful, but not to the great extent that vampires are, making them great choices when you want intelligent undead to challenge low-level or mid-level characters. In terms of combat roles, Whites are generally warrior types, often wearing some kind of armor and wielding weapons. The Monster Manual entry has the White wearing studded leather armor and using a longsword, as well as a free hand for draining life. He also has a longbow in case he needs to make a ranged attack. I think these are decent choices, but I also like Whites that wear no armor and attack solely with their life drain, as well as Whites in slightly heavier armor, or Whites that are spellcasters. Think of a challenge rating 3 or 4 undead necromancer. I should mention the Lich at this point. If I can merge the Lich in with the White here a bit, I hope you won't hold it against me. I would hate to have a Lich held against me. Liches are wonderful and a lot of fun to use. Their main downsides from a DM standpoint is that they can take a while to design if you don't just want to use the same exact one from the Monster Manual. And typically they're so powerful that you can't feature them all too often. Whites are far more accessible, and I have ran at least one encounter with Whites in many of my campaigns.
Number 5. Hags.
Oh, I need a drink of water after that one. And back with style are the Hags. The wicked witches of D&D never get old. Well, they're old. I mean, they're really old, but I just never get bored with them. What's not to love? They have magic, layers, corruption, illusion, tricks, charms, and they make for fantastic role-playing. The Sea Hag is less spellcaster-like, but it still has deadly magic abilities, while the Green Hag and the Night Hag bring in a bit more spell usage. The Hags also have the option to form covens. This way they share magical powers and further spellcasting, though perhaps they fight over it. Again, the increased potential for role-playing is built right into the creature, which gives the Hag so many opportunities for greatness. Or wickedness. Let's not forget the Hag's Eye, which is another fantastic creation made by Hags who combine their dark arts. Above all else, I just love the Hag's connection to folklore and mythology. She is such an archetypal figure who is present in essentially all world cultures. And even if you missed out on stories about wicked witches when you were a child, I guarantee that you have met at least one crazy old mean woman in your life. Maybe you're related to her. Maybe you're even married to her. Oh, gods be merciful. Imagine that adventure. Everything culminates to a terrible choice between fighting a deadly hag or marrying her to save your life. Saving throw against insanity!
Number 4, Medusa.
Medusa is another mythological creature, and the number 2 monster will be as well. Whether you prefer your Medusa to be beautiful and alluring, or the ugly, snake-bodied version, she is a fearsome foe either way. Her gaze can turn people to stone, and her snake hair delivers a nasty poisonous bite. The monster manual also gives her a longbow and short sword to boot. I imagine this was some sort of balance issue. It allowed the game designers to make her petrifying gaze a little less deadly. In other words, a lower saving throw DC. And balance that out by increasing her potential to deal hit point damage in physical combat. Or perhaps it's just a D&D style that wants every humanoid-ish monster to have some weapons. Look at the Harpy. It's not good enough just to have its claws and song, it has to beat people over the head with a club too. Dryads also carry clubs. Satyrs have short swords and short bows. Minotaurs have great axes. It's like ancient Greece had some kind of overly generous weaponsmith that went around handing out clubs and swords and bows to every mythical being that had a free hand. In any case, Medusa is a legend. She is feared, probably avoided, and she's infamous for her curse. She may live alone, which does run the risk of her turning into one of those lone wolf monsters that lives in isolation, yet somehow always ready and waiting for someone to happen by so she can attack them. Dragons. Be careful with these kinds of monsters. As disconnected entities, they can sometimes risk harming your storytelling and role-playing. Not always, I'm just saying that you have to craft stories around these monsters, as they don't do much of it on their own. I mean, if you come across a Medusa, is she going to go off on some long-winded monologue about her backstory and all of her lore? Her power is petrification, not sleep. Just watch out for the dragon effect of, haha, I live all alone here in greed and isolation, yet I'm prepared for this very moment that adventurers came along. Bah, now I attack you. Number 3, Black Dragon! Well, look who we have here. My all-time favorite of the dragons. We've all seen the fire-breathing dragon a million times, and while he is fantastic and classic, I just love the forward curving horns of the black dragon and its acid breath. Also the fact that they live in swamps. I think the blue dragon is pretty sweet with its lightning breath as well. In 5th edition D&D, the dragons are all fairly identical. Their breath weapons are different in terms of their damage and effect types, but otherwise they all basically have the same actions. Frightful presence, claw, bite, tail slap, wings. I would have liked to have seen some more variety in the specific dragon moves or maneuvers, so I suppose in this way I like the 4th edition dragons a bit better. However, the 5th edition counterparts have some solid design to them, despite being so standardized. The dragon's lair actions are where they are able to distinguish themselves a bit more. To this extent, I really did like the Black Dragon's swamp lair. Part land, part water environments are always so interesting to me. They just add a whole new layer and dynamic to the fight. So, as though fighting a dragon wasn't enough on its own, think about a black-scaled acid dragon that can slip in and out of boggy grottos. I should also point out that the Monster Manual presents an optional variant rule that gives dragons spellcasting abilities, which makes me think back to 3rd edition. I personally think this is a great option. Per my usual taste, I wouldn't just go around slapping whatever spell onto any dragon, but craft some sort of meaning into which spells a particular dragon can cast and why. This is a role-playing game here, folks. That's R-O-L-E. Number 2, the Sphinx. If you are ready for something more role-playing and storytelling focused, allow me to introduce the Sphinx. It is also a large, winged, roaring, intelligent creature of myth, but instead of, my treasure, you get all kinds of opportunities for storylines with a Sphinx. Like a dragon, a Sphinx typically lives in isolation. However, Sphinxes are made for interaction, for dialogue, and story development. They are guardians of secrets and of places sacred to the gods themselves. Yeah, they protect treasure too, but it's not in the same greedy and jealous way that dragons have. The Sphinxes protect divine treasures and other legendary items or knowledge, and they must test travelers who want access. Riddles, quests, and ordeals to challenge the adventurers are part of the Sphinx's identity, and they kill those who are unworthy. They are mighty combatants with powerful melee attacks, a slew of great spells, and terrible roaring abilities. The Sphinx represents what fantasy role-playing is all about, passing deadly tests in order to gain access to wondrous rewards, all while keeping a connection with mythology. Number 1, Giant Goat! Probably the creature responsible for the most character deaths in all my 5th edition games. Every time the party is traveling in the mountains, out of nowhere comes the vicious and foul-tempered giant goat, which rams them, boom, right off the side of the cliff, and splat! That's one badass monster. Okay, just kidding. Here's my real top choice. Number 1, the Beholder! Once again, the Beholder takes first place in my book. Dragons are awesome, yes, but they can start to feel the same after just a little while, when they basically all do the same thing in 5th edition. But the Beholder captures so much in just one creature. Really, to me, the Beholder captures more of the essence of Dungeons & Dragons than actual dragons do. Hear me out. They are frightening and strange. This represents dungeons, which are dark and creepy and anything but a typical place where a person lives. They are powerful. This represents the game mechanics, which provide extraordinary powers for adventurers, villains, and monsters to clash in battles that the average person never experiences. They have variety. This represents the game options, which feature many types of races, classes, abilities, items, spells. They have role-playing. This represents the type of game, RPG, which all monsters have to one degree or another. But since beholders are mastermind and controller-type creatures, they are likely to be involved in complex plots and connected to groups. Unlike dragons, which are usually solitary monsters with a very simple, I live in a cave and guard my treasure hoard kind of plots. The beholders have tactics. This represents the combat style, which again, all monsters have this to some extent, but a melee slugfest is nowhere near as tactical as navigating the perils of an encounter with the beholder. And they have randomness. This represents the dice rolls, which is the element of randomness in D&D. The beholder's rays activate by random selection, and they have a variety of effects compared to the dragon, which is usually quite straightforward. So I award the beholder my top pick yet again for not only being unforgettable combat experiences, but a representative, a sort of avatar of the D&D game itself. Thank you everyone for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for D&D adventures, role-playing advice, and fantasy short stories. Also, please support me on Patreon. Your copper, silver, and gold pieces will go towards the production of more content and get you some special rewards as well. This is Esper saying until next time, may your adventures be many.